Walker Kessler is a one-man wrecking crew on the offensive glass, and it's actually changing more than you would think about the Utah Jazz. It's next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 bum. Pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps and on YouTube. Plus, we have a daily newsletter that's free. Go to lockedondaily.com to sign up for the Locked on Jazz daily newsletter. It's the ultimate one-stop for all NBA newsletters. You can get it there. Get it in your inbox each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. What do we got? We'll talk a little bit about that Oklahoma City-Cleveland game last night and what took place in that one. It's hard to watch that one and not think to yourself, like, those are the two smallest, most least desirable markets in the world. And they're sitting there. We can do this. We'll talk about that. Is it time at game, what are we at? Game 36 tonight? I think we're 9-35, so game 36. When is it time to start just really worrying about getting minutes to Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, maybe even Kyle Filipowski? Well, let's start with Walker Kessler, the one-man wrecking crew. The everydayers out there, thank you so much for listening each and every day and making Locked On your first listen. You've made the show what it is, and appreciate all of you very, very much. By the way, to the everydayers who kind of built Locked On, 2024, about a 18% growth in Locked On again. Overall, huge numbers. Not entirely sure we're not the largest sports podcast network in the country now. Well, we are the largest. We might be the most listened to also. So thank you. You guys really built this thing up, and it's awesome. All right, Walker Kessler is on fire. So Walker Kessler opened the year having a really good year. If we recall, he came in and he opened the year and he looked good right away. And it was kind of the story early in the season. It's like, wow, Walker's different. And he was really good. His opening 11, 10, 12 games of the season, we were pretty fired up. He was shooting 68%. He was averaging, I think, 9 points, 10 rebounds. He had 3 blocks. He was elite defensively. He looked great. I would say that he comes back from that little injury, and then against Denver in the loss, he gets 6 offensive rebounds. And I would almost argue that on that day, he figured something out and changed the way he's playing. Because if you look at it since then, he goes 6 again the next night against Dallas, then 3 against the Lakers, offensive rebounds, then 5, 6, 4, 2 against Phoenix, 4, 5, 2 against Brooklyn, 8 offensive rebounds against Cleveland, 3, 5, 2, 3, 7, 6, and 8 offensive rebounds. In the last 3 games, Walker has 21 offensive rebounds. So first off, how is he doing it? What he's doing that's most noticeably different is he's tipping the basketball. Will Hardy talked in pregame the other day. If you do the swim move where you try to get around the guy and jump in front of him and get to him, it's kind of an all or nothing. You got to guess which side. You're guessing before the ball comes off. And if you don't get it, now the other guy's on your top side and transition is going the other way, and you are in a lot of trouble. Walker's doing a lot of staying on someone's backside, but just he's so long, he can tip it. He's also now so strong. And I think this is really, really important for us to think about when we think about Isaiah Collier and Cody Williams and Keyonte George and all of our other younger players. This is Walker finding his greatest strength and what is going to make him an incredible NBA player. He couldn't have done this in the last 2 years. He wasn't physically strong enough. He has created a base strength where his trunk is now set and he's not being moved. And as he reaches up and taps the basketball around, it's not, he's keeping the ball alive. He's not being dislodged from where he was. And this is allowing Walker to now make these plays. In the last few years, I think he gets dislodged. We talked about it early this year. I had a conversation with a longtime NBA coach, and we were talking about Derek Lively. And he kind of said to me, well, the thing about Lively is he's all bounce. He doesn't have any like ground strength. He can't set his feet and hold his ground. If he's setting it on his feet and he gets bumped, he's going to get moved every single time. And I was thinking about Walker, because at the time, Walker I thought was a little bit in between the two. That Walker, for his first 2 years, has been all bounce, trying to get up to jump, block shots, and do things like and grab rebounds that way. And Walker's probably better off being more of a Zubac type who's attached to the ground. Plays positional defense, block shots with both hands, but then on the rebounding end, really is a force. And that's what Walker's doing. Walker has evolved from kind of a bouncy big to a ground big where he has a base that's holding and he's not being dislodged. And that's allowing him to dominate. And here's what he's done since that November 27th date. And yes, that date is completely arbitrary. But you kind of look at the numbers, they work, and it just kind of made me, he ends up, it feels to me like he goes back-to-back nights with 6 offensive rebounds. He might have figured something out. So since then, Walker's grabbing 4.7 offensive rebounds a game. That's a crazy number. Leads the league by a pretty good margin. 4.7 offensive rebounds a night. I'd have to go dig in and get a little more complicated, but there is something called offensive rebounding. There's rebounding percentage is actually the best number you can use to evaluate a player. And that is the amount of offensive rebounds that are available that they grab. Because if you're not on the floor, his offensive rebounding rate is 16.1. It's the number one rate in the NBA. It's really high. Last year was 12.3. This is a massive jump. So this is a dominating change by Walker. And to be at 4.7 offensive rebounds a game is pretty great. In that time, he also is he went from 3.5 to 4.7. So huge. To grab one more offensive rebound a game. Like if you just start to do really, just kind of let me make really rudimentary math here for a second. Walker's only on the floor for like 40 misses a night, right? There's 85 shots, or there's only about 40, let's call it 45 misses a night in an NBA game. Well, if Walker's on the floor for 36 minutes, he's only on the floor for 75% of those 36 misses, right? So if we start to kind of figure that out, he's on the floor for 27 misses a night. And he's suddenly grabbing 5 of those 27 as offensive rebounds. It's a big difference than grabbing 3 or 3.5. It is giving Walker in turn is taking one more shot a game and he's making it. So his shooting percentage is now up at 75% since this time. He's getting one more shot a night and he's making it. The other thing that's it's interesting, is how it's impacting everything else. So from November 27th on, and this is not all Walker, but there is some element that, like, if you're going and grabbing 1 or 2 extra possessions a night, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's really big because those possessions were at 0. You've missed the shot and it's now at 0, and Walker's now grabbing it and putting it in the basket, and you're flipping a possession from 0 to 2. And if he's doing it more than once a night, he's taking suddenly your possessions from something to 3. And if you start to look at kind of the offensive rating of teams in the NBA and what they do, if you were ranked 23rd in the league offensively at 110 possessions and 110, and you go and get 3 extra points a night and go to 113, you go from 25th to 14th. That's the impact. It's massive. Now, Walker's not getting necessarily 3 points per game, but it's not that far off. So again, if you suddenly find a way to turn 3 points a game offensively into a change, you go from 25th in the league offensively to 15th. Well, guess what the Jazz have done? Since Walker's been on his offensive rampage, the Jazz have gone from 26th in the league offensively to 12th. The Jazz have gone from 22nd in the league in shooting to 10th. The Jazz have gone from 6th in offensive rebounding to 2nd. The defense has actually even gotten a little bit better also. The defense has gone from 29th to 26th. Not a lot. 24th to 18th and 18th to 10th in defensive rebounding has gotten better. I'll explain that one in a minute. It's not that big, but it's interesting. But what we really suddenly have is that, yeah, the Jazz offense is getting better, but also the shooting has gone from 22nd to 10th because, one, you're getting a putback from Walker. You also might be getting Walker kicking out to a wide open three-point shoot off a catch and shoot. And the Jazz catch and shoot and three-point shooting numbers are way up. They're up, I think, just in general. The Jazz are just playing way, way better. But so to put all of those statistics on Walker, probably a lot. But I just showed you, if you do jump 3 points a game, if you turn a 0 into 3, this is kind of what happens. So Walker's offensive rebound wrecking crew is changing who the Jazz are offensively. There are other things going on as well, but the one-man wrecking crew that is Walker Kessler offensively has completely changed who the Jazz are offensively. And in the same, put it, either you call it coincidence or correlation, you decide. But in the time period that Walker's gone to grabbing 1.3 extra offensive rebounds, taking an extra shot, basically getting an extra dunk a game, and the Jazz offense has gone from 26th in the league to 12th. Walker's dominating. And defensively, it matters also. I'll explain that next. Plus, when's it time to start turning it over to the young kids to make sure they get the development minutes? It's next on Locked on Jazz. Thursday edition of Locked on Jazz is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the perfect ticketing app. Does everything you could ever ask, and they've just made it better. So whether you're going to a sports, music, theater, comedy, having one of those great memories, Game Time is the place to get tickets, and they've made it easier with Game Time Picks. The Fit feature filters out the fluff, shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. If you can think about an event, whether it's concert or theater, and you want to go, then you can also look for the Super Deal, which is particularly impressive because it's offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app has all-in pricing. It also has seat view. It also has guarantees, so there's no surprises at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time app. What time is it? It's game time, honey. I don't know why I said that. It just kind of felt like that was the right thing to do at the right time. Who knows? Today's show is also brought to you by Rocket RX. It's time for you to boost your confidence, take control in the bedroom, and Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at lower cost than branding alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team, complete 100% quick, 100% online consultation, and you could get a free prescription today. Visit Rocket RX to get started now. It takes only 2 minutes. Right now, our listeners get 40% off their first order when they use Locked On NBA as the code. That's rocketrx.com. Code Locked On NBA for 40% off your first offer. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX. Better sex made simple. How does Walker Kessler's offensive rebounding improve us defensively? Honestly, not as much as I thought. But it's interesting. And I'm surprised it's not having a bigger impact, to be totally honest. So the Jazz allow the most transition of any team in the NBA. And they do it in all regards, frankly. So the league average of allowing transition on a given night after a made basket is once, and we kind of do it twice. And the league average on giving up field goals off a miss, we do it a little bit more than everyone else. And if you look at off live turnovers, we do it a decent amount more than everyone else, right? Okay. So it's not great. The thought I had, and it hasn't turned out to be as big as I thought. The thought I had was that Walker Kessler's rebounding was going to force teams to hold back defensively and not be in transition as much. So we allow 21.3 possessions a night in transition. The next closest is 19.8, and the average is 15. So we're averaging 6 more than everyone else. If you look at just those coming off a missed field goal, I would have thought that it would have gone down a decent amount. According to using the actions of cleaning the glass, it's gone down a tad. This is kind of crazy. According to cleaning the glass, this seems wrong. Off a live rebound, our defense is in transition defensively, which is bad, 40.5% of the time up to November 27th. And since then, it's 37.2% of the time. So, I mean, that is probably once a night that we're moving somebody from transition, which is like 1.3 points per possession, to half court, which is 0.9 points per possession. And it changes us 0.4 defensively. So that might be true, or like that. I mean, that is true. That is the absolute math on it. 0.4 possessions defensively and 0.4 points defensively. If you're a 25th in the league defensively and you move like 0.4, you might move 1 or 2 spots, depending where you are. Since Walker's been on his offensive rebounding kick, we have moved from 29th in the league defensively to 26th. I think that number is probably just because we've played some funky teams, honestly. So I'm not sure that I really think that what I actually thought was happening is happening. But just to give you kind of a concept on it, the Jazz allow on a given night, we'll give you the exact numbers here. The Jazz on a given night allow 11.9 possessions a night off a miss into transition defensively. Okay. So that's for the year, 11.9. Since November 27th, when is kind of this arbitrary date that I've chosen, where Walker has become an offensive rebounding feast, it's 11.6. It's just, I didn't find that as I kind of expected. 11.6 is better. It's 0.3, but it's not. In fact, is because we're scoring more, that number is probably a little even worse. So just, I thought that was going to be the big defensive thing was also, and I've kind of said this on the air, and now I can't prove it. The only thing is that if we score in extra time and the offense gets better, then there are less of these possessions that are available. So there you go. That's that on Walker. The defensive impact since that change, we've just gotten better defensively. I think we've just played people. I'm not convinced, as I was hoping, that I was going to find that Walker was able to impact the game defensively by slowing down transition. We still seem to be in transition 37% of the time off opponents' misses, which is a lot. We're at game 36. The last few years, there's been kind of a moment in time where it becomes clear that it's time to play our younger players. Often it's after the trade deadline, but then there's still a bunch of players on who are on the floor. Last year, I kind of remember vividly that we were in Orlando. It was pretty later. It was later in the year, if I remember correctly. It was kind of February 29th, and it was becoming really, really clear that that's where we were heading with things. Last year, Brice, Sensabaugh, and Taylor Hendricks had spent most of the year in the G League, and if you kind of go look back, Taylor suddenly just kind of starts to get minutes, kind of maybe regardless of whether, just because at some point your 9th pick of the league has to start getting a lot of minutes, and that happened on February 8th. Brice Sensabaugh, who had been in the G League for a lot of the time, suddenly started to get minutes. And again, I don't think that they were I guess what I'm implying is I don't think that they were necessarily earned at that point. And that happened on like February 25th. So I've had some people ask me recently, and probably in tomorrow's Ask LOJ edition, people are going to kind of, is it time? Unless we're doing it a lot earlier than we have in the past, not yet. On Cody and Collier, they'll still be in the rotation when Jordan Clarkson plays. I think it'll be hard to find minutes for Sensabaugh and Cody, but Jordan's not playing for at least another 2 weeks. Sexton, Williams, Sensabaugh will kind of take those wing minutes. Collier will back up Keyonte George when he plays, when he gets this heel issue taken care of. And so I think you'll see, you're not going to suddenly see Collier jump to 30 minutes like he did last night. You're not going to see Cody Williams jump to 30 minutes like he did last night every single night. But I do, as long as Jordan's out here for a little while, I think you'll see both of those meetings take place, or both of those guys get their minutes as long as Clarkson's out. But I don't think to the kind of the questions like, should we just unleash the young guys? This would be considerably earlier. I guess I would say that. This would be considerably earlier than we've done it in the past, and you still have a roster full of players. In February, kind of early February and mid-February, the last 2 years are when it became abundantly clear that the purpose of the remainder of the season was to give those guys minutes. Right now, the purpose of the season is still to develop them, but I don't think with the whole concept of free minutes is that there. I think that's a little early to where we are right now, would be my quick take on that one. And I think we've shown a nice job of like the progression. I mean, the Sensabaugh one, it's too bad he got sick. It's super interesting to me is he's only played 60 NBA games. He's still such a young player in the league. 60 NBA games is all. And, now he's got to come back from an illness, which zapped him, probably seems to have zapped him pretty good. So I'm assuming that there'll be a little work back on that. But it's interesting to watch. And, obviously Taylor out for the year is just so short on those games. So these guys still have just not played. Keyonte nicely, I think, has played the second or third most minutes of anyone in that draft class. Obviously, Victor and Brendan Miller have played more. Bilal Coulibaly in Washington has played more, I think. And then it gets slim on guys that are playing more minutes regularly. Grady Dick might be this year, but he didn't last year. And now Keyonte missing some games. You are getting – your Keontae's high on the experience list, and I think the game has just calmed down to him so much recently. And that's what, playing these minutes does and gets for you by playing 32, 33 minutes a night is the game calms down for you. All right. Oklahoma City, Cleveland. Are those really the two best teams in the NBA? And what does that tell us as a Jazz fan? Next on Locked on Jazz. Today's edition of Locked on Jazz is brought to you by Ultimate GM. This one fires me up. This is super fun. Ultimate College Basketball HC. So I think about it. I'm 54. I'm old. You're not, hopefully, for your sake. Or you're older. Good for you, because the alternative sucks. Anyway, if you've ever dreamed of being a college basketball head coach, this is your chance to step into their shoes with Ultimate College Basketball HC. I think of it as like a back to the old board games. It's the Ultimate College Basketball HC. You control every detail of your program, from recruiting players, hiring coaching staff, overseeing camps, handling nil deals, managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. And when it comes to game time, you can drop offensive plays, set your strategy. The way you play doesn't affect just your current season. It shapes your future of your program. It's a game that lets you feel the weight of what it means to be the head coach and lead your team to glory. Super fun. Think about it, the old board. If you're my age, think about it as the old board games. If you're young, think about it as just super fun. Here's a special offer for Locked On NBA listeners. Use the promo code Locked On CBB. That's Locked On CBB. All caps. Locked On CBB inside the game store and get a free boost for your program. It's a perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. Download Ultimate College Basketball HC. Just visit ultimate-cbb.com or look it up at the App Store. Ultimate College Basketball HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. You couldn't help but watch Oklahoma City, Cleveland. Think two thoughts. Oh, dear God, if that's the NBA Finals, the league is dead. Yeah, that was one of my thoughts. Probably not what I should have been thinking, but that was one of my thoughts. Like, oh my gosh, this could be the NBA Finals, and it would be a disaster. And we can talk about Utah all we want. And I don't want to play in Utah and this not. There are no two cities less desirable to play in. They might be equally as less desirable, but there are no two cities less desirable in the NBA than Oklahoma City and Cleveland. I'm not trying to be critical, but that's the truth. So if Oklahoma City and Cleveland can find a way to build these teams the way they have, slightly different manners, some real tanking involved in both of them, isn't that super encouraging for us? I mean, Cleveland did it through two really, really good trades and a tank. And then Kobe Altman's really smart. You know, East Coast small private school GMs seem to be the other one. As Emerson College for Sam Presti and Middlebury for Kobe Altman. But, right? So Cleveland went through a 3-year tank, 19, 19, and 22. And they, out of that, got Evan Mobley and Darius Garland and Isaac Okoro, who hasn't quite panned out. And then they made a really good trade to kind of sneak on the backside. What I think was, if I remember correctly, I'm just doing this off the top of my head, the James Harden trade to get Jared Allen by having space available and be able to take Jared Allen on the backside of, I thought it was the Brooklyn James Harden trade, if I'm correct, with Houston and everybody else. And they built themselves a tremendous team. But they didn't sign. They signed Max Strus in free agency. Okay, well, Utah can sign Max Strus in free agency. And they went and got Karis LeVert, who at that point it was an inefficient, still kind of is, player, I think also on the backside of that James Harden trade. Also, if I remember correctly, unless they got him shortly thereafter. Nonetheless, I actually think he went to Indiana in the James Harden trade, and then they got him on the backside of that trade. So they've built a really, really nice roster, and they've done it without signing any free agents. And we've well documented, but they did do it with a 3-year tank. They went 19, 19, 22. They got pieces, and then they filled in, and they made an incredible trade for Donovan Mitchell when no one expected them to get involved. To their credit, they were the team that – and Oklahoma City did a 2-year tank, 22 and 24. And then came out of it probably faster than they wanted to, because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is totally incredible. And I don't know how you end up with the Shai piece there. I think that's the one thing where I think the Oklahoma City model is really a false model for people to be looking at, thinking that it can be replicated, because they ended up with the top 1, 2, or 3 player in the NBA on a trade on the first. Like we didn't. Lowry's good, but he's not that. He's not number 1, 2, or 3 in the NBA. Shai is, if they win last night, Shai is the leader for MVP. So in that sense, they're not quite, but they've done a brilliant job. Otherwise, they've also missed on a ton of picks. And frankly, Cleveland missed on Isaac Okoro. Or Isaac Okoro is what he is. They may not have missed on him. Like that might be just exactly what he is. But to me, the first thing that was noticeable when you're watching them is like, it's Cleveland, Oklahoma City. Like, there's not a player that's going to say, I'd rather live in Cleveland or Oklahoma City than Utah. They'd rather live in Miami. They'd rather live in New York. They'd rather live in LA. They'd probably rather live in San Francisco. They might rather live in Philly. They certainly would rather live in Houston or Dallas. Maybe even San Antonio for Texas. Maybe even Orlando for Texas. But not Oklahoma City or Cleveland. The second thing, if you watch last night's game, it was gorgeous. So I don't want to get back on my rant, but the ball moved. It was fast. The players were great. Donovan is so willing to get off the ball. It's crazy. He wasn't very good last night. He was 3 of 16. Oklahoma City is the greatest defense in the history of the NBA. Cleveland shot 52%, 42% from 3 in the game. Oklahoma City shot 53% and 36% from 3. There were a lot of threes. 67% of the 180 shots were threes. Wasn't crazy, but it was because they moved the ball. They played fast. They played with tempo. And they made a lot of those shots. The skill level was amazing. The biggest number to me, like the next time somebody wants to complain to you about the NBA, is the two best teams in the NBA played. One of them is historically the greatest offense the league has ever seen. The other is historically the greatest defense you've ever seen. At the same time, I think that's actually really important, that at the same time, the league is developing as the same best offense of all time and the same best defense of all time, which tells you there's something right about the game. But here's what jumped out to me about more than anything else. There were 75 assists in last night's game. Those two teams played, the two best teams in the league, and there were 75 assists on 95 baskets. Remember when everyone complained the league was all isolation? And you have the number one isolation player in the league in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander there. Almost 80% of all of the field goals last night were assisted. Stop complaining about this game. You know what? You're right. When two of the worst teams play each other, it's not great, and it never has been. But the two best teams in the NBA played last night. 37% of the shots were threes. Almost 40% of them went in. And the game had nearly 80% of its baskets assisted. Pretty awesome. That is Locked On Jazz today. Thanks so much for being an everyday and being a part of the program. If you have not subscribed or followed the program already, please do on YouTube. Hit the bell button so you're notified whenever we go live. If you've not followed me, I'm DLock09 on all socials, Threads, Blue Sky, X, Snap, TikTok. I'll try to increase my volume on all those, so please follow me at DLock09 and sign up for the daily newsletter. It's the ultimate number one stop for your NBA newsletter. It is LockedOnDaily.com. Now we send you the first ever national 24/7 NBA channel on YouTube, or check out Locked On NBA game night after every game, every night on Locked On NBA.